If you're in Fort Worth, Texas, or around, you've probably heard the news. The Montgomery Street Antique Mall is due to shut down and has been approved to be replaced with a new hotel. I figured I would pay the mall a visit. Not only figure out the right story to report here, but also to see what cool stuff is actually in the mall. So right, the mall as it sits has about 240 dealers within it, as well as the Secret Garden restaurant. The mall sits right by the highway and really about within 5 to 10 minutes of downtown Fort Worth. Furthermore, there's drama of what's actually behind this project. The mall just wasn't making enough, who owns the land, and even if the plans will fall apart. So right, my whole objective with this video is to not only do a walkthrough, but also get you a straight and clear, concise answer to what's going on. Now is probably a good time to mention, I originally just walked through the mall, checking out some items and finding out the story. If you watch my channel, you'll know I'm a reseller, so I always look out for things to resell, but I quickly realized this was probably not the place. I'm gonna show you prices throughout the video, the tag of what the dealer is asking, as well as a sold comp of that specific item if I can find one. Once again, the online price I will show you on the screen is a specific sold instance in the past of that item. I'll try not to talk on whether the dealer is being insane on their price or not, but you might be surprised of the difference. Here's a great example. This seller is asking $20 per pencil, and similar pencils have sold as a lot online for $20. Regularly, by the way, not just a one-time instance. The same seller is also asking more than double what each of these signs regularly sell for. Once again, here's a Silver King vending machine by the same seller. They're asking $900, one has sold for $285 online with free shipping. To be fair, their example includes a stand. Is it worth that $600 difference? If you are looking for a Silver King vending machine, I actually have one. Mine is a different variant, but I'm only asking $150 plus your shipping. Quite a better deal than what you're seeing on the video. Furthermore, as I'm showing you prices here, I want you to remember, the dealers, as well as you and me, can ask whatever they want on whatever item. They aren't forcing anyone to buy anything, and if they can get the price they're asking, more power to them.
Nice little TMP piece.
Now, right off the bat, I can tell you this booth is a little bit overpriced, but it does have some quality items. But the only thing I'm really confused about is the amount of quality items. This booth was pretty much empty. I think there was maybe like 20 items total. Now, I'm not judging by any means, but it does confuse me because if I were a booth owner, which I may be in the future, I would probably try and use a lot more of this space because I know the rent is high. You definitely pay the price to have a booth there. So tell me if any of you know why you would only be using like barely any of the space in this, please let me know. I do understand one possible explanation is that maybe this booth owner is about to quit and move out. Okay, so around this time in my visit, I went up to the cashier and asked, "What's going on?" She looked at me with a sigh because yes, this is probably the 500th time today that she's been asked, but she had no problem telling me. The truth is, yes, this building does have plans to eventually become a new development, but it's not happening anytime soon. From the employee I spoke to, at the very least, the mall should be here for another 5 years, and that's if everything goes exactly to plan. which as we know, it probably won't. On the other hand, when and if all of this goes through, the owners of this building plan to find another location within Fort Worth and reopen the mall under a different name. I really think all of the guesses from people online play some sort of role in this happening, but I'm sure to some degree it all boils down to not making economical sense to stay open in the long run. A large hotel with small shops are obviously bound to make more money than this mall, and Fort Worth is growing like crazy. It's bound to happen. Things change, places grow. So yes, it probably will happen eventually, as the news states, but not just yet. For those of you who are around the Fort Worth area, pay them all a visit and look around. Who knows, you might find something cool, or maybe even you might find me making a part 2 to this in the coming years when things progress. Okay, so as I started walking back down these aisles, I actually found this trumpet which was listed below what it had sold for. So right, if you were this dealer, you at least need to go jack this thing up at least double what you were asking, because according to the other dealers, this is way too cheap. All jokes aside, pretty solid deal, good job. I also enjoyed this booth throughout the mall. They had a bunch of custom wood carved items, anywhere from display pieces, figures, that sort of thing. I always hear that furniture doesn't sell very well nowadays, but I would be interested to know just how well it sells in this mall. I talked about earlier some of these booths barely having any items. This wall space was almost completely filled and I had a ton of stuff to look at. I thought that was really cool. Me personally, I loved all the lights and lamps and that sort of thing this booth had. Definitely one of my more favorite booths. And furthermore, a booth like this, I really can't criticize the price because a lot of it is custom made items. I think that's awesome. You know, on a lot of these booths, it's a little bit easier to criticize. I can really look up the price and go, wow, they're asking 3 times what this is going for. This is all custom made, so you can't really put a price on it. Pretty cool. I also thought this Coca-Cola booth was pretty sweet. It had this flange sign priced at $1,100, and obviously there's some lamps and other cool things. Without a doubt, the biggest surprise was within their smalls cabinet.
It says 950 on it. This guy right here, 950.
On this thermometer, they were asking $950. So please, if you're looking for one, look no further than my store where I'm only asking $150, an $800 discount. You tell me, am I underpriced or are they overpriced?
A few neons. $220 on that. That's pretty awesome. Solid wood ice cream cone. I've had a few of these. Still high, especially for the condition.
This booth had a few things up my alley. I like the old oil porcelain lease signs along with the old advertising. They had their Texaco lease sign priced right at $229, and I have one online right now listed for $125.
Western Union sign, I want $225.
In other news, this Phillips Petroleum lease sign was actually kind of priced in line with what it might go for.
Not terrible.
To note, it's also important to remember, if you're shopping online, you'll have to pay shipping if free shipping is not offered. For instance, if you were wanting this Wells Fargo sign, after paying shipping, it will get you closer to the price of the mall dealer. Still a difference, but maybe not as bad as it seems. On the other hand, items where there is already a several $100 difference won't see the same change.
They want $210 on the cattle raisers. $210 on the cattle raisers. A little bit high. $280 on the Golf. Few cans. Huh? $69 on the black gold. What about the Falcon? $100 on the Falcon. Marine gasoline. Frontier. It's pretty sweet. Pump plate on it, 56. Nice little emblems.
I really enjoyed these little centerpieces and these little cases, I guess, where you could have your individual spots. In this little particular sector, there were actually some pretty cool little local pieces, bunch of footwear stock show and that sort of thing in here. I'm all about the local memorabilia, and this is literally all it right there. I don't really have any thoughts on the price. I don't really do a bunch of research, but nevertheless, some cool pieces. And now that you think about it, whether you're a buyer, collector, whatever, if you do take a look through this mall, it's almost kind of like a rotating museum. You know, you always have new stuff coming in, and there's some pretty sweet items that come through this mall, I'm sure. This might be biased as I know the owner of the booth, but in specific, this booth actually was within reason. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying I could have made money on anything, maybe a few things if I really tried, but when it comes down to actually pricing things within reason, this booth wins. I'd like to imagine if I had an antique booth, which maybe in the future, it would maybe look something kind of like this. Kind of my type of stuff, and like I said, prices are actually within reason. It'll probably actually sell. The more I look through this mall, the more I realize there's an important lesson to be learned. You can get different prices in different markets. I just have to make this known as I'm walking through the mall and talking about all these prices, but I do have to ask the question if people are actually paying some of these prices. Some of it just does not make sense to me. There's no way someone's actually gonna pay that, but some of it I actually can't understand. People like to feel the item, and people also don't like waiting to receive something. They want it now.
$2,500 on that.
If you're on a day out shopping with your friends and you see an item you like, you don't want to go home and have to find it again and try and fight for a cheaper price. You want it now, especially if you can get it at a slight markup. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make It's just important to remember that different markets command different prices, but it is interesting to see the difference of prices between what people can get here and elsewhere. I was getting near to the end of my walk through the mall, and I gotta admit, this Civil War prosthetic leg was probably the coolest thing I had seen throughout the entire mall. Now, I have no idea if this price is accurate or if it's off, but man, that is awesome. I would absolutely love to have that. Now, although I don't think I know the owner of this booth, this was actually another one of those booths that wasn't terribly overpriced, kind of within reason, and it had some pretty quality stuff, so I don't know. Maybe I just think the Civil War leg is cool and I'm just saying that. I don't know. A few more signs on other walls, some cattle raisers and other hunting type things. I almost want to say this section or corner of the mall was kind of more towards the hunting and game type items. I mean, you see a lot of taxidermied items, so kind of cool. Now, as I'm on my last stretch of booths going through this mall, I must say I really did have a lot of fun going through this mall. Now, yes, I did talk a lot about prices. It's just part of me at this point. I always look at prices and it's just part of me. What can I say? But I do understand the appeal of this mall, and I get the sadness of people wanting this mall to stay right where it is. If you ever do shop here, I highly encourage it because obviously that's going to help the mall. Of course, the vendors that are in here, these vendors are just like me. I also resell items. But for those of you watching, I also encourage you to shop around some. You know, as a reseller, I also think the hunt is most of the fun. I love collecting, but actually going and finding the item is probably my favorite part. That about wraps up my visit to the mall. Now, just to be completely clear, as mentioned within the video, the new project is only within the beginning stages. As far as the mall goes itself, it could be here for another 5 years, and that's if everything goes according to plan. And if it does go according to plan, they'll relocate to another area under a different name. That's about it for this video. If you did find this information helpful and what you were looking for, make sure and give me a thumbs up and subscribe. I also do short form content. It'll be on the left and right side of me, basically just going over anything to do with reselling. And yeah, I guess that about wraps up today's video. Thank you very much for watching and take care. See ya.